Hey, I'm Bill, and I want to show you my TYM 754 power shuttle, and I want to show you some of the modifications we've done to it and some of the features. For anybody that doesn't know the 754 power shuttle, it's similar to a mechanical shuttle, except for when you shift the forward and reverse, you don't have to use the clutch. It hydraulically, electric over hydraulic, shifts from forward to reverse, which is really neat. Other than that, it uses a standard same transmission, 3 ranges, 4 gears, and a creeper range. Alright, walk over to the tractor and we'll look at some of the mods that I've done to it. I've done a lot of modifications to this tractor, but I've tried to be really careful to not do anything that would alter the original construction, in some way void my warranty. So as we look at this stuff, I'll try to point out how I did it without altering the tractor. Now we'll just start right here at the door. The 754 has 2 steps. I know a lot of tractors only have 1. And this wasn't real stout and sturdy, so I added this brace in here that is all bolt-on, and it bolts to the mount platform that the fuel tank sits on. Moving on around the tractor, of course, I added a fire extinguisher. We put fire extinguishers on all our machinery. We do a lot of hay in the summer, and so fire is a big hazard. Moving forward on the tractor, in here, not sure how well you can see, but I've added a toolbox using this front grill guard kind of as a basic framework, and then underneath that I put expanded metal and made a bit of a chain box there. And put 3 6-foot chains in there, and they just hook to the sides here. And that's worked out really well. Moving on around the front, we've welded a lot of hooks on. I put hooks on both sides on the top, also put them on the back, and any hooks I put on a bucket, they're cat proof, so the cat can't bend them when they rub on them. But anyway, I weld them onto a plate first. And I learned that kind of from Scott Rowland at J&J Machinery in Caldwell, Idaho here, but that's how they do them a lot, and that makes for a good secure hook, and it kind of spreads that load out over the bucket. I like these rear hooks because you're lifting closer to the roll pin, and you can actually lift far more than you can out on the end. Moving around the front, I also put a big hook on the middle here, which allows me to hook to the outsides on the back and something in the middle, and I can actually control that load and keep it level. Moving in here on the skid steer quick release, if you can see here, this is just a stabilizer, this black part, but underneath there is an actuator, which is a 12 volt, and it's actually linked into the quick release, and with a button in the cab I can release the bucket and attach to a different implement, all done from in the cab. We do have the 3rd valve on the loader. We use that for a grappling hay fork that handles 8 to 10 bales at a time. In the bucket we also added a reversible cutting edge, and that's something J&J Machinery puts on, and that's a really good deal. One, you don't wear out the lip of your bucket, and this is quite thick and quite heavy. The other thing it does that I like even better is it stiffens that bucket. It makes you way less likely to bend that bucket. You kind of spread that load out. Back up here on top, it's very difficult to see these skid steer quick attaches on these machines, the way the loader and the 4-wheel drive big tires and all, very difficult to see this matchup point. So what I've done is I have reflective tape on the tractor part, and then reflective tape on each implement as well. And actually, I guess this is both on the bucket, but back in here I've got another reflector tape that line up and kind of helps me get attached to that implement, whatever it may be. I'm walking around the right side here. On that quick attach electric release, this is the wire you disconnect when you have the loader off. I just had the loader off this tractor. I pressure washed on it for about an hour. I know it doesn't probably look like it, but we deal with a lot of mud, snow, and manure feeding cattle, and so the tractor was quite filthy. One neat thing about the 754 that I don't see on the smaller models is it comes with these safety stops actually on the loader. You undo both of these latches here, and that plate comes off, that C channel comes off and sits on the cylinder for safety to hold your loader up. In here, this is an interesting little mod that costs about 5 cents. If you can see it in here, it's just a piece of PVC with some pipe insulation around it to plug that hole, and I have it on the steps on the other side as well. We haul our dog in the tractor a lot, and that is a perfect place for a dog's leg to go in there and break their leg. So I've added that on both sides. I always make sure I have that in there. I think it'd be real easy to hurt a dog badly right there. Up on the top you can see I've changed the stock work lights out to LEDs. These two inners are just replaced the stock lights, and then I added these ones out on the corner. I saw in the TYM Motors group one of the guys that bought a smaller 26 or 27 horse. He was using those, and I added those on the corner, and those are great for seeing beside the tractor, which is really neat. Moving towards the back. Of course, we use a 3-point homemade trailer hitch that I made years ago. I've had it on many tractors, but got a gooseneck and the ball. We also use this little actuator. We grab a trailer, and then this electric actuator, which has a switch in the cab, goes down and locks the trailer on. And that unit is all just removable from the tractor. I'm plugged into the trailer power on the tractor, and just the switch is on a magnet in the cab. So that can come off, go on another tractor. Here's one of the most major modifications I did to the tractor. This gets a little complex, but this tractor did come with two remotes, two sets of remotes. So this is one set, and there was another set here. Well, we run hydraulic hay rakes with this tractor, and I wanted to be able to control the flow of the hydraulics to the hay rake. So control flow, not pressure. So what I did is I plumbed out of the pressure side of this port around, and back here I added a large flow regulator valve in here, and that can be controlled from in the cab. And then what that does is when you want less flow, it diverts that flow back to the return side instead of going to the implement, and it works really well. And I'll show you the lever inside and how that works. Look at that flow regulator there. I don't know if you can see this linkage moving, but I added in this slot inside here, and I'll go over these hydraulic levers. I've changed all these, but this actually controls that remote's flow. As I move it forward, it goes faster, and I move it back, it goes slower. And that's controlling the A circuit, which is the detent port. For those people who may not have used your hydraulics, you have one is a conventional spring-loaded, both-direction hydraulic remote. The other one, when you go forward, it simply detents and locks in. When you go the other way, it's spring-loaded, and then if you go further, it's a float. Well, this is the one I run my hay rakes with, and I control the speed here. I've also changed the rear work lights out to LEDs. And that center deal you see there is a camera. I'll show you from inside the screen and how that works. I used a wired camera on this one. I've used wireless on other farm machinery. We've got wireless camera, but this particular wired camera, the quality is much better. I think it's a 7-inch screen, and I'm real happy with that. Had to take the cab top off to wire that, but well worth it. Use it all the time. Around to the side here, one thing I neglected to point out, I don't know if you can see it, but up on the top in the center there's a GPS antenna. This tractor actually has guidance on it for farming. I use guidance quite a bit on this when doing pulling a disc, particularly at night. pulling field harrows in cattle pastures. I love having guidance. It's difficult to see where your last pass was when you're pulling a big wide harrow. And that allows me to do things at night too, not just during the day. Okay, now let's go in the cab and look at some of the stuff we've done in the cab and kind of review the cab. The TYM cab's really nice. I like it. It's not a very big cab, I mean, by standards from other tractors maybe, but it is a very comfortable cab and great visibility. And I've done some modifications here, but one of the odd things is on the 754 it did not have armrests, probably because of those levers on the far side there. They tend to almost be under that armrest, and that may be why they did not include them. Another thing, so I added those. Another thing it did not have was a retracting seat belt. It actually just had the strap seat belt that laid across the seat, and I added the retracting because now you can do that with one hand. You can grab that with one hand, bring it over, and plug it in. And up here in the cab, for any of you TYM guys, of course, most all of them have the same windows and these little latches. They tend to pop open. If you haul your tractor on a trailer, I highly suggest you do this simple, cheap modification. This little pin right here, if I take that out, I can open. If you look, I actually drilled a hole there. That hole has to go through there and through that inner arm as well, so that you capture both arms, and then there's no way for that handle to open in vibration. I had a vibrate open just working the tractor. So that was one of the first things I did. We talked about that camera. I put it up here in the well in the top of the cab. There's kind of a well here. I think most of the TYMs have that. And there's the view that we're seeing in the camera. And it's quite a large camera. It's I think a 7-inch camera they call it. And that was a whopping $56 or something. I see them cheaper than that now. Moving on. These tractors do not come with a Bluetooth radio. Maybe the new ones do now, but I simply added an $8 Bluetooth transmitter. I've got a charging phone holder here for the wireless charging for an iPhone. And I added this monitor. This is a Murphy monitor. Don't know if I'm going to be able to get any picture of the actual readout on there. Looks like not really, but that monitor will monitor about 20 or 25 engine criteria through the diagnostic port on the tractor. Right now I've got it reading coolant temperature, oil pressure, percent of load, which is basically the throttle of the tractor. If the tractor's pulling as hard as it can, it's at 99%. And I've also got the fuel rate in gallons per hour, and I can flip those pages very easily to a one-up display. On the one-up display, you might be able, there you can read it. It says we're at 0 RPM. I kind of slewed through some of these. There's the voltage. There's the total hours on the engine. There's the percent of engine torque, the fuel pressure, the barometric pressure, and that ends up being your turbo boost. Barometric pressure standard day is about 13 or 14 psi, and that'll read up to about 19 when the turbo's working hard. That shows whether the pedal is being used as the throttle. You saw it turn off and on. This is a preset RPM that I do not use. Here's how many revolutions this motor has made since new, and on and on. This thing has all kinds of data. This is how many hours is on this particular unit, 180 hours since I installed it. The coolant level is at 100%. The fuel burn rate in gallons per hour. And we're back here to boost pressure. Here's the air pressure differential. That number will change if the air filter plugs up. Exhaust temperature, that's inoperative on this particular one. It doesn't provide that data. tachometer, engine RPM, coolant temperature, and that's the main reason I installed this. No water temperature on this particular model, just a light I wanted to gauge, and oil pressure, so on and so forth. Back to this Murphy monitor, one other thing, it also will show if you throw a code in the tractor. There's a light here. This is actually an amber light, and this one's a red. If it throws a code that puts it in limp mode, you'll get an amber. If it's stopped the tractor immediately, it'll show a red, and you can read the codes in this unit. That unit, I got the data from the diagnostic port, which is down under the dash behind the fuse panel. And we were able to find the CAN bus high and CAN bus low terminals in that about 10-prong plug. It takes a little bit of doing. If anybody wants to know how to do it, I can pass the information on how to find that. That's probably the neatest mod I've done to this tractor. That allows me to select gears and so on that make the tractor work at its optimum best economy and best efficiency. Starting up here in the front, I added some ports for plug-ins because I put an S-Lite guidance system in here, which actually will give GPS guidance. There you can see some indications. This one tells if you're on your line. This light up here tells you which way you need to correct to get back to your line, and it'll tell you acres done and so on and so forth. Really handy unit. I use it in multiple machines. It swaps from this tractor to another, to other tractors or hay swather or whatever. I put antennas on the top of the cab on each machine, so I don't have to swap the antennas. I just leave the antenna where it is. Moving on down, this is the plug-in for the multi-charge board. It happens to have a voltmeter. That's kind of neat. Moving on around, I added a switch here, which is, I labeled it implement power. And what that does is back in the trailer plug on the back of the tractor, there's one hot, all the time hot wire in there, and I wanted to be able to switch it on and off because of a spray rig that I use behind this tractor, and therefore I can just reach up and turn off or on the power to that spray rig at the end of the row. This throttle lever, for those of you that have TYMs, you know they have the little, what I call the lawnmower throttle handle. It's about that tall. That was not going to work for me. I wanted something that I could be on the steering wheel, reach over, and control that throttle while running it. Another thing I did on that throttle was I installed stops. Now I got these from my dealer, and I put a stop, and these are actually the same stops that are used in the 3-point lift levers. And I have this to where, depending on what I'm doing, I would come out of the turn in the field and I turn down the row, I can just pull to that stop, and that sets a certain RPM. I also marked it for the Eco PTO RPM, which if you look on this sticker, it actually tells me here that 1506 RPM in Eco PTO equals 540. So that particular mark there actually indicates where 1500 RPM is. So I would set the stop there and then just pull to that when I'm in the field working. I put a steering wheel spinner knob, kind of hard to put on these sloped spokes, but I did manage to get one to work there. Loader control lever, I've changed this quite a bit in several different ways. I moved it up initially. I had it taller. The problem you get into there, you have more throw and you end up clattering with the door or whatever, and of course more throw is less comfortable. Eventually what I did is down here at the base, I raised this whole unit up about 5 inches and then shaped this lever to go around this gear selector so that it never hits it. And now I have nice short throw on my lever for controlling the bucket. This particular one, I run the third function on the outside out here. The buttons are out here to run the third function. I showed these hydraulic levers, the 3-point draft control and 3-point lift I did not change. I showed these levers a bit earlier, the 2 remotes. They were also basically lawnmower levers down here, short, behind you, not very comfortable. I brought them up, forward, and out, and they're a pretty natural place now for your hand to fall to control them. Another thing I did with that radio, eventually I'll probably put a straight Bluetooth radio in this. These have a Kenwood radio, but they're not Bluetooth. But on your remote control for your radio, I just mounted it here, kind of dark there, but I mounted it here on the post on Velcro so I can reach up, change the volume there. When using my Bluetooth transmitter over on the other side, I can use that volume also to control it. Back down to the center here, I added a switch here. There was a port there for a switch on certain models, cruise control or something on the small hydros, but I added a rocker switch there, and what that does is control that loader quick connect. I'll go ahead and start the tractor here and raise up the loader where we can see it. Out there on the loader, if you look real carefully, you can see that pink boot over that actuator. I'm going to roll that down a little so we can see it a little better. There you can see it right there. And when I push this button down here to release, that actuator will begin to move, and you can see it shortening up now. And if we look up on top, in a second here we're going to see the handles come up. You can just begin to see the handles coming over the top of that frame, and that will release that loader bucket. And there the pins are all the way out. And then when I want to attach a new implement, I push on the top of this, which is the lock. It's labeled down here as lock and release. And those handles start to go down. So yeah, when you push down to lock on that, you can see these handles starting to disappear. The one's already down, here goes the other one. Actuator is extending out, and the pins are going in on both sides of the skid steer. I made another video about this, but that's really handy. I've been running it about a month now, and it's worked flawlessly. It took me some time to figure out how to design the ears on those pivots to get them the right geometry so that they would work, but that system has worked extremely well. So I talked about the power shuttle on the 754, the 654 and the 754, and also the 1054, the 105 horse tractor have it. And basically it's right here. You pick this lever up, go forward, and it shifts it. It basically clutches it to go hydraulically. They do have a clutch pedal. This pedal is simply a switch, does the same thing that this function does, except this one is forward or reverse. Now let's talk about the performance of the tractor and how well it's worked for us. We've got 342 hours on this tractor in 1 year. That's quite a bit. We've used this tractor for all kinds of things. We've used it for pulling big hay rakes, lots of loader work, plowing snow, moving hay, both small bales and large square bales. Didn't really plan to use it for that, but it turned out that we ended up doing a bunch of big squares last year. And they're about 1,400 pounds, and this thing handles those like nothing. The tractor, the main reason I bought this tractor was to give relief to some of our larger equipment, and our large tractor, which is a large John Deere, that I was putting an incredible amount of hours on doing work that a smaller tractor like this could do. This tractor's been extremely efficient. It's averaged 1.3 gallons of diesel per hour in that 340 hours, and that's incredible for a 75 horsepower tractor. The things that attracted me to this tractor, a number of things about the features. Number one, that power shuttle. power shuttle is pretty common on larger farm tractors, and it is super efficient, and it works well in the field pulling heavy implements. Where like a hydro in a 55 horse tractor, a hydro is not made to do deep tillage or heavy work that way. I was looking for something in this 75 horsepower range, but one of the main things was these tall front tires. We deal with extreme mud during the spring thaw, deep snow, and we needed something that would claw its way through some serious mud, and this does. It's extremely good in the mud. So the size of these front tires was a major attraction. The Model 654, the 65 horse, is basically a very similar tractor, this same motor, derated slightly, but it has shorter tires and wheels. I like the taller ones on the 75. Another thing was the self-leveling loader. This linkage allows that bucket to stay at the same angle as you go up and down. Huge selling point. But the number one thing was this right here, the dealership. This particular dealership, when I visited them, they had a real shop, they had real inventory of tractors and parts, and they provided good service. And that's probably the greatest value in this tractor for me. Other dealerships did not have a real shop, did not have parts in stock, did not have mechanics who were capable of working on the machines they sold. This dealership does, and I've been highly impressed with them. That is one of the greatest values as you choose a tractor. The TYM 754 is sold also in the Midwest as a Rural King RK74, I believe they call it. And it's identical to this in construction with a couple of different options. They are well optioned, but they're basically the same identical tractor. It has a Deutz 2.9 turbo aftercooled Tier 4 motor. It does not use DEF and does not use regen or a filter. It uses a diesel oxidation catalyst, basically a catalytic converter, so there's no operator involvement in keeping that Tier 4 running with regen or anything.